Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. I'm Alison Humphries and I'm joined today, delighted to be joined by Bevan, who runs a business called SocialJems, pun intended. So welcome to you, Jem. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And we are here today to talk to our recruitment audience with a deep dive on LinkedIn. I just want to start by explaining that Jem styles herself on LinkedIn as a dork, completely obsessed with social media. Jem, why don't you explain to our audience how you came to be doing what you're doing first, just briefly?
So basically, it was an obsession with social media. So I started my sales career in cafe and warehouse selling phones. When my little boy was born, I moved into B2B, was given a phone, given a laptop and told to crack on and make cold calls. And I really struggled with the trying to get your personality across over the phone because I'd been used to being face-to-face. So I looked into LinkedIn and I was kind of like, well, why are we ringing that company and speaking to a receptionist 12 times for them to tell us that they're trekking to the husband and Annie or they don't know when they're back, when I can just drop them a message on LinkedIn and create posts that they can actually see that's marketing what we actually do. So I started doing that just because it was a lot easier for me personally to get my personality across in that way rather than on the phone. So I sold payroll solutions to recruitment agencies for my sins for 8 years. And for the last 6 months of me being in employment, a lot of my clients in the recruitment space kept asking me to help them and their teams with LinkedIn. So yeah, just before my 30th birthday, I thought, sod it, let's give it a go.
So your business, SocialJems, grew organically. And are all your clients in recruitment?
Quite a lot of them are still in recruitment, but we do have we've got people in lots and lots of different areas, but we love that because if it's, say we had 10 recruitment agencies that we were working with all worked in similar fields, it'd be very difficult to make them all stand out when we're trying to write the same thing. But yeah, we work with lots of recruitment agencies, payroll companies, back office. So one's linked to recruitment, and then on top of that, we've got coaching and people that even sell products that we work with. Is kind of interesting.
Okay, so you're right across the recruitment ecosystem, if you like, and people who visit Jem's profile, and that is Jem, Jem, Bevan, will see that her recruitment experience has really led to a deep understanding across a wide range of sectors of recruitment as well. Now, I've explained to our audience that we are going to drill down on LinkedIn today. Just for context, I'm going to ask your opinion on something. Why, Jem, does anyone bother with any social media platform apart from LinkedIn if they're a recruiter?
So it depends on your sector. So in terms of LinkedIn, LinkedIn is the best place for you to get your clients. But in terms of that candidate attraction piece, that differs slightly sector to sector. So if we're talking as an example of a company that's working in construction, it'd be worth them joining some of the groups and publishing some of the content in the groups over on Facebook, because quite a lot of the individuals that they're wanting to approach will be hanging out on there. But if we're working in the tech space as an example, and we're looking for designers and developers and things like that, then actually it's better to do candidate and client attraction on LinkedIn. So it is just a sector specific. There is slight differences depending on what areas you work in.
So interesting. And which sectors would you recommend broader social media engagement for apart from construction?
So you're more like warehouse pick packers, Nursing, caring, probably
Okay.
some education as well, construction,
Uh-huh.
those types of roles. Driving.
Okay.
There's quite a lot of groups in terms of driving groups on Facebook as well, and it's good to publish and post content in there so you know you've been seen in the right areas.
Right. So we're talking about content there for brand awareness rather than sales facilitation type content.
So it's a bit of both. You can start conversations over on Facebook, but you tend to find people are more susceptible to having business conversations over on LinkedIn rather than anywhere else.
Right.
Actually, by publishing those posts in those groups, yes, it's brand awareness, but it'll also encourage some individuals to actually get in contact, reach out to you and ask you to help them for something else like that. Say they've seen a role that you got a driver in Leeds that you're looking for, they might be inclined to drop you a message and say, actually, have you got anything in Sheffield?
Got it.
So it's starting conversations in the right areas with the right people on top of the brand awareness.
Now, let's narrow in on LinkedIn, which is a full-time job at the moment for recruiters, and probably about the third biggest item on most recruiters' profit and loss account. Let's start with some cautionary tales. What for you are the most common errors that you see when recruiters are using LinkedIn?
So there's a few. One of the biggest ones is lack of personality. People assuming that because they're dealing with business professionals that everything has to be overtly corporate. When in reality, actually showcasing that personality, showing who you are, writing content, messages, even comments in a tone how you'd speak actually helps you build rapport with people. Your biggest unique selling point is your personality. Especially in the recruitment space, there's a lot of other companies that are offering exactly the same as you. And the best way and easiest way to stand out is by letting your personalities, who you are, what matters to you, your ethics, your morals, all shine through in everything that you're doing online. The next one is being scared of letting their teams actually have a voice on social media.
Sorry to interrupt, but just going back to being yourself, could you give us an example? Could you bring this to life? Because I have seen LinkedIn recruiters posts going, in my view, too far in that direction.
What I tend to say to people is it depends on what you share. So if you're naturally an oversharer and you share everything, then that's the type of person that you want to be online, because effectively that's the person that they're going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. You're probably going to overshare in the conversations that you have with them because that's who you are. But other people are also natural oversharers, so they'll be drawn to you anyway. It's why we have the term your vibe attracts your tribe. But if you're the type of person who's been brought up on that overly corporate, where every single interaction with the client has to be nothing but professional, being too far that other way and putting too much personality in is completely out of their comfort zone. And it's not something that they naturally do in a business meeting or at a networking event. So if it's not something that you do in those situations, then don't do it online. And the reason I say that is if you're overtly sharing, so as an example, let's use me. If I've put a post out saying I'm adopted, and then someone comes up and starts a conversation with me in person about me being adopted, and then all of a sudden I go, and I don't want to talk about it, then we've caused a disconnect. Because people are like, but you're talking about that online, why can't we talk about that in person? I don't get why you're being different. And then what happens is, instead of it is actually building rapport with these individuals, we're breaking it straight away as soon as it's been built. So when I say be you, it has to be you. So the you that turns up at networking events, the you that turns up at a business meeting, that's the you that needs to show up online.
Okay, but what about actual content? If what's important to you in your personal life is what, constitutes the main ingredient of your LinkedIn profile, football or, your exercise or whatever, how is that actually helping you as a recruiter in a business sense?
So effectively, it's enabling people to buy into you as a person and find common ground. So it's enabling you to build that rapport. So I'm not saying post, the only thing you want to be posting about is, I went out this weekend with my friends and got really drunk, I had a great time. But actually talking about things like a prime example is my post today is all around I didn't actually post last week because I was poorly. I've had that cold that everybody's had.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually left the house this week for the first on yesterday for the first time and went
Yay.
for a really long walk with the dogs. But in there, I mentioned, you know what, I've been dying all week. And the only things that I've actually been able to do for myself is just give myself a little bit of a nap with a box of Kleenex in between calls with clients because January is really busy. That's going to be relatable for a lot of other people and a lot of other business owners because there is times where the business takes priority over anything else. And you can only just take those little minutes for yourself to try and get better. In terms of that, it said we've had a busy January, it's not going to be slowing down, we've got loads on in terms of work, but it's giving people a little bit of an insight into what it's like in my life.
Right. Okay. Now, thank you. I interrupted you earlier. You were going to talk about recruitment bosses' fear about giving their team members freedom to do things on LinkedIn.
That is the thing. So a lot of recruitment agency owners are fearful of actually letting these people have their own voices online because then they're going to build their own client base and then all those people are going to go with them when they leave. But preventing those people from actually having those conversations and not enabling them to actually have a voice online is preventing them from getting business in that area.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of business development, we all know that we don't want a one-pronged approach. And if we've just got all our recruitment consultants hammering phones day in, day out, trying to get through to people, it's only going to be so effective. Whereas if we've actually got them making phone calls, sending email marketing campaigns, having a strong online presence online, attending networking events, all of a sudden we've got 4 different ways that we're actually getting ourselves in front of people and generating business.
Mm-hmm.
We all know, I think, that in terms of when we're doing any form of business development with an individual, people will build a relationship with that person. And there is always going to be an element that people will follow anyway. But it's more detrimental to you and your business by stopping people having that voice because you're preventing yourself from getting more business that you could have had.
Right. Okay. So let me just challenge that a little bit, because as a former recruitment boss of various sizes of business, I was always quite conscious that the business was spending quite a lot of money in terms of branding, and a consistent visual brand was very important, as well as clear sales messages. Now, the risk, I think, here is that the people who are creatively doing their own posts maybe it's not coherent with the brand. How can we stop that doing any damage? Or do you think it doesn't do damage at all?
It depends on where people are in the journey. So if you've just started out, they've just started posting, there's going to be about 2 or 3 people that actually see those posts. So in terms of how much damage it can make, it's going to be minimal. However, what you can do to protect your brand is put brand guidelines in place so people know what they can and can't talk about. They can even invest in someone like myself coming in and actually doing a little bit of training with people to give them a rough idea of what they want to be talking about. Because effectively, one of the biggest parts of my training is just don't be. It really is as simple as that. How you'd act and how you'd conduct yourself in a networking event or in a business meeting is exactly how you want to be conducting yourself online.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put something like, well, saw his post of the week and he don't care about his clients and starting arguments. You can even disagree with people online, but as long as you do it in a respectful way. So instead of, no, you're absolutely wrong, which is what some people do, a better response is, I don't agree with this point of view, and this is the reasons because. No one can ever get mad at that.
Just for listeners who are not seeing the video on this, every time you hear Gemma go quiet, she's mouthing obscenities, but only
I'm sorry.
by illustration. Just want to point that out. Okay. So one of the things that I found very helpful with the businesses I work with is actually to put, as you say, brand guidelines in place. But this is not just a list of use these fonts and these images at all. This is also about what point of difference we're trying to illustrate. and examples of the style of actual examples of the style of English that they might want to use, as in, for example, speaking to you in the active way rather than using passive verbs, and whether or not we use emojis. Now, some people may find that quite prescriptive, but I've found it forms two things actually. Number one, it's an absolutely brilliant tool to get a brand new marketing person to produce one of these, because they've got to interact with the team to understand who their clients are, what their challenges are, and what the business's point of difference really is. And secondly, that document then becomes a very useful part of the initial training that you put new recruiters through, because actually I think many business owners would be surprised if they listen to how their staff are actually selling their business. So thinking about one I know who would switch from training recruiters to only hiring experienced people, and they've done quite well in hiring experienced people, but they just assumed that those people would pick this up. And when pushed, we realized that these experienced people had just brought their own baggage with them. So they were using the exact same lines to an approach to sell this business as they had done the last one. And so we clarified that situation with a proper brand exploration about customer personas, client and candidate, but also what our real point of difference was, rather than the usual, we build long-term relationships, which any regular listener to this podcast knows is one of my pet hates, because it's just empty, hot air.
I actually want to just elaborate on that one a bit, because you're right. Yeah. A lot of times people will go, do you know, you've got people on each end of the scale. Ones that are like, absolutely do not touch social media. We don't want you on there. We want you to use emails. We want you to attend networking events, and we want you to call people. That's it. Then there's the other end of the spectrum that'll go, do you know what? Go for it. Get yourself out there. But if you give people absolutely no guidance and just say, go for it, there's too much wiggle room. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, well, I could post about this, but I can also post about this, and I can post about that. And then they've got too many ideas and they're confused in which area to go in. So actually having the brand guidelines in place and something like content pillars as well, where we're actually homing down on, not only do we want this type of content sharing, we want it every month, a piece on a client testimonial, a conversation that we've had with the client, a day in the life of, bits like that, so we know that each person's putting that out week in, week out. And from their point of view, when they actually sit down to create this content, it makes it easier because they've got some structure.
Yes, absolutely. Giving people no framework is not freedom at all, is it? It's a complete messes with your mind. And we often do our best work when we have some form of restriction, don't we? Where the parameters are already set for us. Okay, now I encounter a lot of people who consider themselves to be quite expert on LinkedIn, but it is very difficult for them to remain up to date. The algorithms are constantly changing. So a question in two parts for you here, Jem. Why and what are the latest changes now that we're in February 25 that people may not be aware of, please?
I also want to point out there is no such thing as a LinkedIn expert. You can't be an expert in something that changes that quickly. The most recent changes that you probably want to be aware of is, so on your paid accounts now, your banner at the top of your profile, if you have a paid account, by the way, and you haven't got this yet, it is being rolled out to everyone, so don't panic and don't think they've missed you. You will be getting it over February. Is the banner section of your profile now is going to be like a carousel type thing. So you can have more than one banner on your profile, and it can slide across, giving people different bits of information. So now you can add a little bit more on who you are and what you offer, more call to actions in different areas, and it enables you to really make use of that marketing space now.
Oh, okay. So it's like a mini slide deck almost.
Yeah, like a PDF. So you know the PDF carousel type ones that you see on LinkedIn where it's a big graphic and the slide across and there's quite a few of them. You now do that with the banner.
Right. Okay.
Only on the paid account. On a free account, you don't have it.
And do you think that will come to free accounts or not?
So we're seeing a bigger divide between standard LinkedIn accounts and paid accounts now. So I don't actually think it's going to go to everyone, no, because they're now adding, you've now got paid accounts on business pages on LinkedIn. They are trying to push the paid side of it more than anything else.
Got it. Yeah. Okay, interesting. So people can be having a think about what they want to put up. So it might be that there's a candidate orientated banner and then a client orientated, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Okay. With me, as a prime example, we do complete management of social media accounts, all different social media and different types of training and coaching. So that now enables me to have a slide for each of our offerings to give people more information.
Right, interesting. So why do LinkedIn keep changing these algorithms? Is it purely to create more monetized options for themselves?
I think so. And I think it's also looking at what others are doing as well. So if we go back 2 years ago, 3 years ago as an example, Clubhouse came from nowhere. It was you had to have an invitation to go over to the Clubhouse one. Everyone wanted to be on it and it was just audio. So because that took off, admittedly, it took off for a while and it kind of died a death. But because of the audio element, LinkedIn then added an audio element. So to some extent, they do follow other people's trends. So like prime example, one of the latest changes that we've seen is that video element. So the video section of LinkedIn now is different to what it used to be. Historically, your video content just came up in your newsfeed like everything else. But now you've got a standard newsfeed running this way and a video newsfeed running that way.
Right. I'm not sure I've spotted that.
It's more on your phone. If you're not seeing it on your phone, you need to just update your app.
Okay.
Now, if you look on the app as well, you'll also see a button at the bottom now that says video. So they're pushing that short form video content more now than they ever were before. Now, what I believe the reason for this is over the last few years, we've seen TikTok come and absolutely dominate. Then YouTube have gone into YouTube Shorts, so we're seeing more short form video in that element as well.
Okay.
The Reels side on Facebook, Instagram, everyone wants short form content, short form video content, because we all want to learn absolutely everything about everything, but none of us actually want to put any real time into learning it. And we can get quite a lot of information from a little short video. So if you're not currently creating videos on LinkedIn, you need to be. And one thing that you really need to be aware of, because quite a lot of us do it. So millennials and older, because we're used to dial up, because we're used to the phone taking a while to actually click in, we do something what's referred to as the millennial pause. Whereas at the beginning of the video, we'll be quiet and we'll kind of wait for it to click in, even though it technically doesn't click in. And it's all about that energy straight away. So you don't want to be pausing at the front of your videos because it's in a different format. You've got less time now than you did before to grab people's attention in that video. So make those first couple of seconds count.
Right. How short is short form?
So we tend to stick to between 45 seconds and a minute and a half. However, when we're first starting out with clients, we'll probably do some shorter to start with so we can build it up, because you're asking people a lot. If we put out a video and it's a minute and a half, but we've not built any traction up and people don't really know what we're talking about, in terms of the amount of people that are actually going to watch it to the end is going to be minimal.
Right.
In the beginning, it'll be shorter, snappier 20-30 second videos, and then we'll build it up to be the longer ones, because that by that point, we've built an audience that's interested in actually seeing what we're creating.
Right. So on these videos, from a recruiter's point of view, what kind of content are you seeing work well at the moment?
Tips. So actually giving people tips, helping them out. What do people need to do before an interview? Why is it important for clients to have a really good onboarding process? When we're saying, I want a person with 5 years experience and they need to have all these qualifications, talk about the fact that we're actually in skill shortage. There's skill shortages in a lot of areas right now. Talk about actually getting someone at 80% and how you can actually train them. So like what we've just been talking about in terms of you, Alison, with the client that you had, where historically they were getting high-end recruiters that have got tons of experience, but they also come with tons of like bad habits and things that they've picked up on. Actually talking about little things like that in terms of your content of, yes, you can have someone that ticks every box, but you come with some bad habits. It's better to actually get someone in at about 80% and train them to get them to where you need to be.
Right. Okay. Oh, so these might be bits of advice that you'd love to offer all your clients, and but you, or even one particular client, perhaps.
You'll notice at different times of year, there's common themes and common questions clients will start asking you. If your clients are asking you, potential clients have got the exact same questions.
Right.
So by creating content on it, you're giving them the answers before they've even got to a point where they're going to ask you that question. So then they're more likely to jump into your inbox, already making a decision.
So just before we pressed record on this podcast, we were talking about how we would trail it once we've edited the podcast. And you made an observation about how you would present it, which suggested video shorts rather than the full, just the link to the full length thing. So, so which bits might you pick out of this video, for example?
So it'd be really juicy, knowledgeable bits. So where we've had like an in-depth conversation of what do we need to post and having those pillars in place. That's something that we know other recruiters are going to be asking those exact same questions. There's also, if we just go back to the initial question that you asked me, what people are doing wrong, it's that is the piece. It's where a lot of people are actually going, do you know what? We need to be focusing on as company pages. Company pages is be all and end all. But in actual fact, your company page posts aren't going to get as much traction. So what you want to do in that situation, like with this podcast, you want to publish some shorts on the company page. Then you want some on your page. Then you want some on my page. Because if all I did was reshare that post from the company page and all you did is reshare a post from a company page, it's constant duplicated data. It's automatically pushed down people's news feeds. It's not going to get as much traction as a post that you'd created yourself.
Right. Okay. So reposts have got low traction. Interesting. I did not know that before today. Thank you.
There's also two different differences between reposts as well. So if you've noticed, when you go to repost a post, there's an option to repost and repost with your thoughts. If you just repost it, any traffic goes back to the company page or wherever the repost has come from. Writing something above it then drives traffic back to your page.
Right. Okay. Oh, well, that alone is a pithy little piece of information for a short, I think. Okay. Now, one of the issues that a lot of recruiters have is actually identifying the return on investment they're getting. There seems to be no end of possibilities and the time that they could be spending on LinkedIn. How should we be measuring ROI on LinkedIn, Jem?
So there's a few things that you need to be looking at. You want to be looking at who's recently viewed your profile. The majority of those individuals, you want them to be in your ideal target market. You want to be tracking the content analytics. And I don't just mean by saying, oh, look, it's had 1,000 views. Who are those views? What areas do they work in? What companies? What are their job titles? Are they the people that you actively want to see your content? So mine as an example, I've got 60,000 connections, but I know when I post on LinkedIn that the majority of my views are business owners, managing directors, sales individuals, and recruiters, which are all the people that I can sell to. So you need to be tracking and making sure that when you are creating this content, it's being seen by the right people. If it's not, there can be multiple reasons for that. It could be that your messaging's wrong and you're just not hitting the mark on topics that appeal to your ideal target market. It could be that you're not doing it enough of the other stuff. So the content creation element is only one piece of the puzzle when it comes to LinkedIn. Your outreach, and I'm not saying send pitches, sales pitches to people, actually get to know individuals, but that and the comments all work in conjunction. So effectively, when you're liking someone's post or commenting on someone's post or dropping into their inbox and starting a conversation, you're telling LinkedIn, I like their stuff. So LinkedIn's automatically going to assume that they're going to like yours. So by engaging on your ideal target market's posts, their company page posts, you're ensuring that when you post, it's coming up in their news feeds.
So it's about the quality of the interaction. Oh, can we just lay to bed a very persistent misconception? I regularly meet people who tell me how many impressions their post has had. And they seem to be under the illusion that that means that many people clicked on their whatever it was they posted. So let's just say it now. That is not what it means. Jem, explain to our audience exactly what impressions are on LinkedIn.
An impression is you have basically come up in someone's newsfeed. It doesn't mean that they've stopped on it in any way, shape, or form. It has just showed up in their newsfeed while they were online.
Right. And they probably didn't even see it because that newsfeed moves pretty rapidly, doesn't it? Okay. Now, I suspect that some of our listeners, like me, have had many, many, many approaches from businesses offering LinkedIn outreach services. I personally am on the receiving end of about 20 approaches like this on an average day. And what surprises me is A, how poorly targeted they are, and B, when people do get the meetings or calls that they're seeking from those outreach efforts, they often seem to have done zero prep. Why is this? Do businesses actually get results from these mass automated outreach campaigns?
So they'll get some. And would you believe me if I tell you, I also get these exact same messages myself all the time of people offering the services to me. Just want to go back to the other one just quickly. So we covered content, tracking content, and what we can do to push our content out into people's news feeds and tracking that element. There's also the outreach piece as well. So you want to be sending messages, but not overtly salesy. And when you're actually having conversations with people that have said, I want to work with you, can we have a call? Ask them where they found you. That's a really good way of actually finding where that person found you from. You can also, although it does affect the traction of your posts, add things like UTM links in there, where it's a link back to the website so you can actually track how many people have gone and got in contact with you off the back of a post.
Okay.
The messages side, I'm sorry, I'll go back to that now. So with the outreach, quite a lot of people just blind message absolutely everyone on LinkedIn. The best way to do it, and I think my viewpoint on this is different to a lot of people in marketing just because I'm from a business development background. So for me, you need a sales nav account. With a sales nav account on LinkedIn, it's about £70 a month. But with that, it enables you to turn LinkedIn into a giant CRM system. So you can really hone in on who those people are that are your ideal target market. So like for me as an example, at the beginning of this year, I did an outreach marketing campaign on my own account. I sent 180 messages out to people that were in my ideal target market. They had recently posted on LinkedIn in the last 30 days. They'd been in business for 1 to 3 years and they were all self-employed. So I was looking.
You could filter for these things, could you?
Filter for all of those things through Sales Nav. You can even put, you can even pinpoint people who've recently had funding. You can even pinpoint companies that have recently had changes in leadership at the top. So one of the directors has changed, which you and I both know is a prime example to get in contact with someone. Because when someone first starts in a role like that, they want to put their stamp on it so they can say the success of the business was down to the changes they made. So there's little things like that. Now, in terms of that outreach, it needs to all be about them. One of the problems that a lot of people have is, you need me, and this is why you need me. And in actual fact, they don't need me. They need someone like me, and that could be one of 100 different people that they approach. So make it about them. My message literally said, happy 2025, let's make this year out. That's it. That gave a little bit of Jem personality because I do talk like that, as we've noticed. I've whispered a little bit because I'm a little bit sweary occasionally. So putting that in my messages, it's showcasing to people what it's going to be like working with me. Because again, that personality is in there. That message wasn't salesy in any way, shape or form. But I ended up with 20 different people jumping into my inbox for a conversation about social media off the back of it. Because it was nice and just said, let's have a good year. What are you planning on achieving this year? And continue the conversation on. There's other ways of getting in contact as well, but it wants to be really knowledge rich. If you've got a salary guide that's just recently been created on your industry, send it in a message to some people in your ideal target market. Show them you know your
So some good advice there is to show that you understand your audience in those outreach emails, rather than, I'm afraid I'm sure you agree, there are loads like this, that actually start with, hello, my name is, yeah, we know what your name is. We've been sent a message saying such and such has sent you a LinkedIn message. Hello, my name is this, and this is what I do. Do you want to talk about it? It's entirely led by the person who's doing the outreach, their agenda and what they do. And it doesn't show any understanding of their audience, does it? Okay.
Whereas the thing is, so we've had it loads that if someone connected with you and then sent you a message saying, thanks for accepting my connection request. Just see, I do this, this, and this. We've seen a 95% increase with all our clients that actually work with our stuff. So you need to work with us. Can we book in for a call? You're like, eye roll, delete. I can't be bothered with that. But if someone actually sent you a message saying, thanks for accepting my connection request, as you can see, I'm a recruiter, but don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with a random sales pitch. I'm sure you get enough of those already. But I did think it was worth saying hi and letting you know I'm here if you need me. All of a sudden, that person's perception's changed. Even though we've technically sold to them still, we've told them who we are and what we offer, but because we've acknowledged that they get this constantly from people not doing it right, all of a sudden they're like, do you know what? It's really refreshing not to be sold to. Thank you for sending a nice message.
So if listeners are thinking about outsourcing their outreach efforts on LinkedIn, what should they be looking for when choosing to outsource?
Things like them using SalesNav, actually asking for lists of individuals that you're already working with or your team's already speaking to. So the first things we ever do when we're doing any form of outreach campaign for our clients is we'll ask for all that information. We'll tell them at the beginning that the SalesNav account's needed, because by having that SalesNav account, not only can we pinpoint these individuals, we can strip out all your clients as well, which stops us from sending any messages going, yo, buy my shit. And I'm going, what you want about? We've been with you 6 years.
Yes, I'm your biggest client. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then that ends up putting you in a conversation that you didn't need to have. It's just embarrassing. And it affects your reputation with that individual as well, because they think, well, if you can't even do that right.
It really did. Actually, just this morning, I got an automated outreach email from somebody to whom I have referred some of my clients for automated outreach. And I just thought, oh dear, this reflects very badly on you. You said when we spoke originally, Jem, you said that recruiters do find it difficult to be consistent. I'm going to put you on the spot for my final question. If you had to pick one thing for recruiters to do consistently on LinkedIn, other than just adding relevant contacts, what would it be and why?
Engage with your network. So that's the bit that everyone misses. They all think it's content. And content's only a small part. Actually, a lot of the rapport, a lot of the relationship building's done in the comments sections, and that doesn't necessarily have to be on your post. Every time you leave a comment on someone's post, you spark an interest. They're then going to go back to your profile and go, well, what they do. And as long as it's optimized, which is a key thing, so don't go out there and start leaving all these comments when you've got no banner and no information about what you do. Before you start doing the comments and actually having an online presence, make sure your profiles are optimized. In that banner, we're telling people who we are, clearly what to come to us to help with. Add your email address in there, your website, your contact number. Make it as easy as possible for people to see who you are and how you can help.
Okay, and to contact you, of course. Okay, so make your page frictionless, if you like, but actually think about engaging with your community rather than just pumping more content out. Thank you. Jem,
if you've not got much time, sorry, listen, if you've not got much time, focus on those company pages. So like I've mentioned through this, a company page on LinkedIn does not get anywhere near as much traction as a personal page. You don't get anywhere near as much interaction in terms of likes and comments either. So if you've got a list of 50 companies that are on your I need to work with these companies list, then make sure every week that you're going through all their company pages and liking and commenting on stuff, because you'll find after a period of time, that could be a month, it could be a couple of days in some cases, the decision makers of those businesses will actually jump into your inbox and go, thank you for supporting me. And then all of a sudden you start a conversation with a person you really want to talk to.
Okay, that is really sound advice. Thank you, Jem. Okay, listeners can sense, I think, that Jem's got a lot more that she can share. So, Jem, how can you support listeners? What are your various things that you do, and how should they get in touch with you?
So easiest, best way to get in contact with me is LinkedIn. I am always all over LinkedIn. What we can do to help, it depends on what you need. So we can train your team so they can do social media for themselves. We can do the social media on any channel for you, complete outsource, from actually creating the content to doing the engagement piece to doing the outreach piece for you as well. And that, I do power hours. So if you just need an hour, you want someone to go through your profile or even talk to you about your marketing strategy and help you put your content pillars and things in place, I can help with that as well. But yeah, best way to get in contact with me is LinkedIn, and there is a link on my profile to book into my diary if you want to have a conversation.
Okay, right. And I'm sure that will be time well spent. So, Jem, thank you very much for that practical advice. Please do get in touch with Jem if you want to talk to her about LinkedIn and your use of any other social media channels. Thank you, Jem. I've been Alison Humphries, yet again, of Recruitment Leadership. Thanks for listening, and please join us next time. And if you're interested in working with me as a board advisor or non-exec director or executive coach, get in touch with me. Okay, thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.